Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It's great to be here. Mic is on. Sounding good? Awesome. I have waited many, many years for my father-in-law to refer to me as Mr. Hines. So I can basically sit down now. So this particular lecture actually has quite a history to it. I don't know how many years the Manitoulin Christadelphians have been throwing or putting on a lecture on the Thursday of the Manitoulin Bible Camp, but it's many, many years. In fact, I've been coming to the camp, I first came to the camp 23 years ago. They had a lecture then, and likely wasn't the first one. So year after year after year, we do these lectures, and we invite our friends from the community. And as I was thinking about what to present tonight, I considered how we typically approach these lectures. And what we typically do is we target, or we direct the message to those who might be visiting, who aren't part of our community. What I want to do tonight is actually talk to everyone, because this message is not just if you're new. This message is for everyone. So, a while back, I don't know what was happening at the time, but I had this thought, I had this realization as I was scrolling through social media. I realized that Christianity is making a countercultural resurgence. It's kind of cool again to be Christian. There have been a lot of very prominent people who have publicly converted to Christianity and who openly share their faith. And it's a bit different than Christianity used to be in the past. These people are sort of making it their own, and they're wrestling with it in different ways. I'll throw up a slide. I'll show you a few faces you might recognize. We were just saying how well the technology was working. All right, now it should work. Yes. All right. So, some of these faces you might recognize, some of them you might not. That's okay. Top left corner, Justin Bieber, super famous pop artist, is a Christian. Mark Wahlberg has the ashes on his forehead from Ash Sunday, I think is what it's called in the Catholic Church. Russell Brand, very popular actor, YouTuber. Jordan Peterson. I think everyone in this room has heard of Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, before COVID, did biblical lecture series to sold-out theaters across North America. Who would have thought that would have ever happened in our lifetime? And just recently, this gentleman here, on the left, Wes Huff, was on the Joe Rogan podcast, the most popular podcast in the world, and talked to Joe Rogan for 3 hours about the Bible. It has 7 million views, just the YouTube video. So all of this is happening. All of these people are finding meaning in their life, or certainly searching for meaning. And it leaves us with a question. What actually is Christianity? Is it A or is it B? These are both Christians. And I was preparing my slides this morning, and it looks like the birds have rather had a go on the pillar on the side there. No, I didn't realize it till today. But these are both people who profess to be followers of Jesus Christ, disciples of Christ. Is it the awe-inspiring splendor of this cathedral? Or is it the pomp of this crowd? These are both Christian churches, but both very different. So, what is Christianity? And what does it mean to be a disciple of Jesus Christ? That's the question. And the premise of our talk tonight is this, that if Jesus came back and was standing in this room, or went to this place, or went to this place, or spoke to that lady or that man, his teachings would be just as radical today as they were when he taught on this earth 2,000 years ago. I was very particular when I created my title for this class. I called it Christian Discipleship in a Modern World. There's a reason for this. Before people were called Christians, they were disciples. It says in Acts 11, verse 26, at the very end of the verse, it says, "And the disciples were called Christians first at Antioch." Antioch is in modern Turkey, and that group of believers, those disciples, coined the phrase Christian to refer to themselves, to sort of codify their beliefs as they were talking to their friends in the community. They would say, "I'm a Christian, I'm a follower of Christ, I'm a disciple of Christ." Well, what's a disciple, actually? Well, a disciple is someone who disciplines themselves after something else. And so if you are a Christian, if you are a disciple of Jesus Christ, your aim, in theory, is to model your life, your behaviors, your mindset after Jesus Christ. I think so far we're all on the same page. But here's the thing. When Jesus came 2,000 years ago, approximately, his teachings were radical. Jesus' teachings were different than the world in which he lived. To the Jews, he broke their law. He violated their norms and their traditions. And to the Romans, the things he taught were preposterous. They were totally counter to their cultural norms, to the things that they thought were great. And if he came today, it'd be very much the same thing. Because we're going to look at just a very few of Jesus' teachings, and we're going to see how our society today, though it may claim to be Christian, does not follow these teachings. Jesus' central request of his disciples is the following. It's found in Mark 8. When he had called the people unto him with his disciples also, he said unto them, "Whosoever will come after me or follow me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Now I'm just going to back up the slides right to the beginning. The cross has evolved in its meaning over time. What does it mean to take up your cross and follow me? Well, what Jesus meant, sorry for all the slide flipping. What Jesus himself did was he actually denied himself. He destroyed the self. He literally took up a cross, and he died on that cross, and he invites you to do the same. Now that's kind of preposterous, especially in the time when Jesus makes this invitation. What an exciting invitation, hey? Come with me, let's go get crucified. In the time that Jesus lived, crucifixion was the most horrific means by which an individual could be put to death. It was designed to create a slow and painful death. That was objective number one. Objective number two, maximal shame. Maximal public shame. And crucifixion wasn't meant to just shame the individual, it was meant to shame the family. It was the worst thing that could happen to somebody in the Roman world. And yet Jesus invites his disciples to do this. Come with me, we'll carry a cross, and we'll die on this cross, because we're going to deny ourselves in the process. This is what his disciples are invited to do. And fundamentally, the teachings of Jesus result in us debasing self and elevating God. Something we've been talking about at the Bible camp all week. And nowhere can we see a better example of some of the teachings of Jesus, very simple teachings of Jesus, that are radically at odds with the times in which he lived, but the times also in which we live, than what is found in Matthew chapter 5, as Jesus delivers the Sermon on the Mount. Before we look at the Sermon on the Mount, we have to first explain that Jesus does not ask of his followers anything he himself has not already done. But he makes it crystal clear this is not meant to be easy. And so as he delivers the Sermon on the Mount, he refers to the laws which were given to the Jewish people by God's servant Moses, typically. And we have a sequence of passages that go like this. He'll say, "You have heard it said of old time," and he lists the command, "but I say unto you," and he lists and he outlines the radical extension of that command. He elevates the command. So we're going to look at a few of these. And we're going to look at, if Jesus came today and commanded this of the people around us, even the ones that profess to be Christian, what would they think? So let's look at the first one. "You have heard it said to those of old, 'You shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment.' And Jesus says, 'But I say unto you, that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. And whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. And whoever says, 'You fool,' will be liable to the destruction of fire." Have we not all been frustrated? Have we not all felt like this? Okay, you might say, well, that's somewhat easy. I just have to be patient. I need to be kind, and I need to calm my temper when I'm driving my car. But Jesus continues. He says, "You have heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth," right out of the law of Moses. And actually, there's some beauty to this law. It constrained people in their retribution. You could only extract back what was taken from you. What we see where these laws don't exist is it just keeps escalating and escalating for decades and centuries and sometimes millennia. And you go to some parts of the world and there's feuds going back thousands of years. They just keep extracting their pound of flesh back and forth. So there was some merit to this command in the law of Moses. But Jesus is going to take it and elevate it even further. And this is radical. He says, "But I say unto you that ye resist not evil. But whoever will smite you on the right cheek, turn him the other also." And again, we know these words. You're a Christian. You know Matthew 5. You know the commandments of Christ. And you also know that Jesus himself did this. When he was on trial, they smacked him in the face. And they spit on him. And they said, "Prophesy, who smacked you in the face?" So the Christian, the follower of Christ, the disciple of Christ, is to act like Christ, even in those circumstances. And yet, Anybody know where this is? Yeah, it's in Russia. These are Christians in Russia. Soldiers going off to battle. But not to be outdone, we have some Christians in America, we have some Christians in Ukraine. Jesus says, "A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another, as I have loved you. By this shall all men know that you are my disciples." And these Christians are going to go, and they're going to fight each other to the death. Maybe you're with me on the war, but maybe you're entertained by sport. Do you think these guys win their championships by turning the other cheek? By resisting evil? You can see how Christianity's cool, right? You can swagger out. It's actually so ironic, because if this was in the time of Christ, these guys would be the gladiators that the Christians would be fed to. They would be in the ring with them, getting eaten by lions. Jesus continues, Ye have heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye, and it's the same one. He's continuing. Forgotten how my slides work. So he continues, after he says what he's just said about violence, he says, "And if any man sue thee at the law, and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also." Somebody take something from you, give them extra. Here, have it. And yet we live in a society, a Christian society, that seeks retribution at every turn, that extracts its pound of flesh, that makes things right. He continues, "And whoever will compel you to go a mile, go with him twain." Now this is interesting. It sounds like, hey, just be that good guy. Go the extra mile. Well, actually, that's our phrase today, isn't it? Go in the extra mile. Well, what this actually meant in the time of Jesus was the Roman soldiers had a rule where they could compel a Jew or a subject to carry their equipment for a mile. That's the context of Jesus' command. When your enemy asks you to do something, go extra. Is that how we operate as human beings? No. Is that how our society operates? No. Is this difficult for a human being to do? Yes. Jesus continues, "Give to him that asketh of thee, and from him that would borrow of thee, turn not thou away." Radical generosity. Giving. This isn't commentary on social policy or what the person might do with the money. It's a spirit of giving. You just give it away. Jesus continues, "Ye have heard that it hath been said, You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you. And pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you." Yet we have this. And I don't mean to pick on America, but America professes to be a land that trusts in God. They print it on their money. In God we trust. They open the sessions of Congress with a prayer. We don't do that in Canada. We've given all that up. But in America, they claim to be a people of God. And yet the Republicans and the Democrats hate each other to the core. And this is what they do to each other. And we're no different here. It's not an American problem. The reason we do all these things, the reason why we love our enemies and we pray for them which despitefully use us and persecute us, is so that we may be the children of our Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and he sendeth the rain on the just and on the unjust. And Jesus himself did all these things. As he was being crucified, he prayed to his Father that he would forgive them, for they know not what they do. Jesus, as radical as his teaching is, he is not asking us to do anything he himself has not done. But if you want to follow him, you need to discipline yourself after him. But hang on a second, you might be thinking, like, okay, Jesus lived in the times of the Romans. We live in the Christian West, right? A lot of our society, a lot of our culture is actually comes from Christian roots, from Christian ideas. And again, certainly in America, you see this a lot more. And it's very easy for a believer to get sucked in to the Christianity of our culture, to the flavor that the world puts on following Christ. You might think, okay, it's easier to be a Christian now than it was back then. And yes, maybe it is to a certain extent. We're not being burned at the stake or crucified for our beliefs, at least not here. And it actually can be kind of intoxicating as we watch what seems to be a Christian revival in the nations. Here's Donald Trump a few days after he was elected, after his inauguration. These are all religious leaders gathered around. He made a big point of getting these leaders together that they might pray over him. And as a follower of Christ, you can look at this and you can say, well, that's really amazing. And to an extent it is. It is amazing. But it's also not, it's also important to not get carried away with believing that following political leaders is the key to following Christ. Jesus says, "My kingdom is not of this world." It's not about here. It's not about now. Jesus is saying this as he's standing in front of Pilate, who is the governor of Judea. He's on trial. Pilate's going to be the one that has him put to death or sign off on his death warrant. Jesus says, "If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight, that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence." And so it's important for us to remember that, because it's so easy for us to get sucked in to the day-to-day politics of the world that we live in, often framed in the morals, often moral issues that we see are either right or wrong, but curiously are never discussed at a level of God. There's a lot of cultural issues being contended in the world today that have a moral angle to them. They're debated by left and right, by religious and atheists, and yet God is often very absent from the discussion. Jesus, while he was on earth, was tempted to be drawn into these discussions. When the Jews came to him and they asked him this, "Jesus, should we pay tribute to Caesar?" It's one of my favorite stories in the life of Christ. It's basically a no-win situation for Jesus. If Jesus says, no, you shouldn't pay tribute to Caesar, well, that's treason to Caesar. If he says, yes, you should pay tribute to Caesar, well, then he's going to be rejected by the Jews. The Jews hated the Romans. How could their Messiah condone paying tribute money to their enemies? That's not how Jesus responds. Jesus elevates away from the problems of this world, and he responds masterfully, where he asks to see this penny. And he says, whose image and superscription is on the penny? And they say, Caesar's. And Jesus says, well, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's, because you are all made in God's image. These little coins, they're irrelevant. Let Caesar have his little coins. You give to God the thing that you were made to give him. So as a disciple of Christ, your mind needs to elevate from the things of this world. You're going to be different. Your natural reactions are not going to be the ones that produce godliness, that emulate Jesus Christ, your Lord. Now, as we're talking about this, as we're talking about all these commands that Jesus gave of, loving your enemies and not returning evil for evil, giving away all that you have, and when you're sued, give away extra. Go the extra mile. The question that has to be cropping up in your mind potentially is this. Hey, if everybody followed Jesus Christ, wouldn't the world fall to pieces? All it would take is one bad person, right? If everyone in this room was a dedicated disciple of Christ and followed all of his commands to a T, and there was one bad person in here, they could have a heyday, right? Maybe they would. The point of following Christ is not for success in this world. Many of Jesus' disciples, his immediate disciples, the 12 apostles, died heinous, horrific deaths for their Lord. It's not about this world. It's not about society's function. We've been called to emulate Christ. So what does that look like? To be a disciple of Christ, we must discipline ourselves after Christ. And this is what Jesus did in relation to his Father. He had perfect obedience, perfect love, perfect and complete self-sacrifice, perfect manifestation of his Father's will, and perfect manifestation of his Father, and a perfect surrender to his Father's will. All those commands that Jesus makes force us to surrender to God, to trust that he will provide. You give away what you have, and you trust that God will give you more. Give that extra cloak, because God will give you another one. You believe that God will protect us, and if he doesn't, we will obey him anyway. I want to illustrate all of these concepts with a story. This is a story, a true story, that takes place in the Acts of the Apostles in chapter 16. In Acts chapter 16, the Apostle Paul and his friend, Paul and Silas, are traveling to Philippi. We're going to make a long story short. There's a bit of a kerfuffle in Philippi. They end up on trial in front of the magistrates. These magistrates have Paul and Silas beaten. All the while, in his front pocket, Paul has his Roman citizenship card. His Roman citizenship card gets him out of beatings without a trial. All right? Yet, Paul keeps the citizenship card in his pocket. He doesn't mention the fact that he's a Roman citizen. Kind of bizarre. At any moment, while they were coming down on him with the beatings, he could have said, "Hey, I'm a Roman, stop it." He doesn't. He allows himself to be beaten and cast into a dungeon where his feet are locked in stocks with Silas. And that night, instead of thinking, "Man, what a dumb decision to become a Christian," they sing praises to God in the prison. And it says that the prisoners heard them sing. They were singing loud. And they weren't just faking it because Jesus told them to sing when you go to prison. They were excited. They were excited not because they were sore, but because they had an opportunity to be like Christ. They got to be like Christ, who suffered for what was right. You might think, "Andrew, you're nuts." But what happened in that jail, as they sang, was there was a great earthquake, and the jail opened up, and they were loosed from their stocks, and the prisoners could go free if they wanted. But Paul stopped them. Nobody escaped, and the jailer, who was a Philippian, he was a Roman. He didn't know anything about the Hebrew Scriptures. Didn't know anything about Jesus Christ. Didn't know anything about the law of Moses. He comes rushing in, and he's about to kill himself because he thinks all the prisoners escaped and death would be his consequence for that. And Paul stops him. And Paul uses his experience of suffering, of a figurative death and resurrection with an earthquake, to teach a man who doesn't know the Hebrew Scriptures all about Jesus Christ. And after that was done, and after his whole family was converted and baptized, what's actually beautiful about this story is the jailer himself washes their wounds. That's a conversion. That's a man now who is also acting like Christ. Discipleship of Christ is acting like Jesus acted so others might see Jesus Christ. You are the Jesus Christ that other people may encounter in their life. If you are his true disciple and you follow his commands. Paul's mindset, the Apostle Paul's mindset of all this was the following. He says in 2 Corinthians, "For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory." For our light affliction? This was a man who was beaten, stoned, whipped, shipwrecked. It's nothing, he says. This is nothing. Why? Because we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. It's not about this life. Jesus Christ, when he walked on this earth, it wasn't about this life. His life was taken from him because he did what his Father commanded. He was obedient unto death. He lived out the fullness of the meaning of his teachings. And when he asks his disciples to follow him, he is asking them to do as he did, to behave like he behaved, to love like he loved, to sacrifice like he sacrificed, to elevate God over self. None of these things are easy. And he makes it very clear that it's that way. He tells his disciples that they will be hated of all men. It's not for the faint of heart. But mark my words, it will be worth it. Because this life is a blink, a flash in the pan. Whatever suffering you may encounter cannot be compared to eternity, to the righteous eternity. Jesus asks all of us, he invites all of us to follow him. Jesus has passed beyond death into life eternal, and he beckons to us to follow him there, if you will just obey his commands. Jesus, when he taught his disciples to pray, taught them the following prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done. God's kingdom is coming. God's will be done. And the way that we partake of that great kingdom, the way that we follow Christ into eternity, is to obey Christ's commands and to do as Christ did himself. As he struggled in the garden right before he was crucified, he said, "Not my will, but thine be done. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever."